Joined now by the former executive producer, Hockey Night in Canada, co-host of the Bob McCown podcast, Mr. John Shannon. How we doing, sir?
I'm great, boys. How's Friday?
Oh,
Fridays are always good.
we're always in a happy mood talking to you now because you're on Fridays or have been on Fridays.
Don't worry,
this,
that'll change.
Summer.
Don't worry.
And it will actually. But
And players are on the ice wearing NHL crests, John. It's a good time of year.
Yeah, give me another month, okay?
Yeah, okay.
Weather's too good. The weather's too nice. We should be out there hitting the ball still.
and we are, John. And we are.
They just can't. We can.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Now it's our turn. Jim Rutherford this week saying everything needs to go right for the Vancouver Canucks to make the playoffs. It made headlines here in Vancouver. Do you agree with him? Do you see much margin for error with this club?
Well, I don't see any margin for error. The Pacific Division is going to be a tough division. You tell me how many teams are going to come out of the Pacific to get to the Western Conference playoffs. Two things that I know. First of all, I do think Jimmy's right. If everything aligns and you get quote unquote career years from some of your stars, particularly the guy in goal, then this team has a chance. It really does. It has a chance to make the playoffs. The other thing, and this is just an observer from 10,000 feet, this was a really serious Jim Rutherford. I noticed an air of, okay, there's no BS going on. We're going to, and whether that's him feeling some pressure or feeling that that's the way the message has to be delivered, I saw a level of seriousness out of Jim where I think 2 years ago or even last year, there was a desire to have a little bit of levity and a little smirk on your face. I didn't see many smirks with Jim Rutherford the other day.
That's interesting considering how well you know him. Yeah.
Let me ask this. He's 74 years old. He amassed this huge staff fully with the knowledge that one day he was going to pass it on. Do you think this means that this could be Rutherford's last year if he does get this practice facility going by the start of next offseason, as he hopes, that maybe he may just say, okay, job's done here. Patrick, you know how to run the club, and fades off into the
sunset. Or what does he
sunset.
want to accomplish with this team, do you think?
I think he loves having his name on the Stanley Cup. I think that, here, as much as we think we know the inner workings of NHL players in any decade, there is a level of compete, pure and utter compete, that these people have that the three of us will never have. Even on the golf course, we will never have what these guys, that's in their DNA, the desire to win, the desire to push all the poker chips into the middle. That's what makes these people different than us. That's what drives them to continue even into their 70s to want to win. The desire to compete, the desire to win is different in them than it is in us. And Jim Rutherford is no different. I know he's no different. He's a competitive SOB. He wants to win the Stanley Cup again. His name's already on it a few times. 3 by my last count. Why not a fourth? You want to be a fourth. He's in the Hall of Fame. Put a fourth time on the Stanley Cup. That's what this is all about for a guy like Jim Rutherford.
Is the presidential job like the best job in hockey because it allows you to sort of throttle up and throttle down your involvement in the public eye, and yet you're still there. You're still getting your name on the Stanley Cup. You're still a part of the equation.
I think organizational charts have just shifted, Blake. I think a president in 2023.
I've said this before. Yeah.
A president in 2023 was a general manager in 1996.
Right.
How many times have you seen organizational structures of any company where they want to keep promoting people, but there's only one president, so now they have senior executive vice presidents on Tuesdays. They add titles in order. So this is just, general managers are, what we're assistant general managers, in my opinion.
Senior AGMs, yes.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Wow.
Yeah.
Senior executive AGMs.
I laugh at my partner's question because is it the best job in hockey? It depends who your owner is.
Oh, there's that.
If you're
Yes.
closest to the owner in that gig, you've got to report to the owner. So I think all of those gigs are different. Thatcher Demko says this is a do or die season for this group. John, do you concur? Could you see if not working out that somebody from this core has to go after this year?
Well, I do think he's right. But in many ways, I suspect that he's speaking not as much for the group as he is for himself, because I think that the pressure for this team to make the playoffs is squarely on his shoulders more than anyone else. We know this team can score goals. We do believe that Rick Tocchet's system will allow them to play a better defense. But Thatcher Demko has to be Thatcher Demko of the bubble. And that's really the key. I mean, I know last year was fraught with injury, but even before he got hurt, he wasn't, at that same level. Demko has to be spectacular for the 60, 65 games he plays for this team to have any chance at the playoffs. And I think that in many ways that's what Demko means for himself and the group. And I think that's what Jim really meant when he, I think, put the pressure on a lot of these high-end guys on the club to know full well if they don't perform at a great level every night, the Canucks will not have a chance for the playoffs.
Yeah, that's an interesting point too, because I think athletes are more aware than ever before of their career, where it goes, and how to extend it. And I think you're quite right that Thatcher Demko realizes that a put out fires virtually every night probably has a tax, probably has a toll with regards to his career. And he's been the guy on the spot having to save the day and be Superman too often in his life cycle here with the Canucks.
Well, and I think that speaks to what they're trying to do on the defensive side of the puck, what they're trying to do to give him some more support inside his own zone, whether that's Tocchet's whole structure with the forwards being more involved in defense, or just the realigning of guys like Ronick and Cole having to contribute defensively.
Elias Pettersson's contract situation, he bristled a little bit about the questions surrounding that. And yet, of course, for hockey fans that follow the league at large, they see DeBrincat, Dubois, Matthew Tkachuk, all RFAs to be, all in the same situation that Pettersson's in, ultimately leave the club. So there is a pattern there, whether Elias Pettersson wants to acknowledge it or not. Is that a pattern that will continue, do you think? Do you think RFAs will execute what power they have? Or do you think that was just an isolated streak there over the last 18 months?
I think it was a little more isolated than people realize. I think there was for instance, for Matthew Tkachuk, I think it was a confluence of things that said, you know what, it's time to leave Calgary. Pierre-Luc Dubois has never been happy anywhere he plays. What's to say he's going to be happy in LA a year from now too? So I think everyone is individual and they have individual traits. I'm not worried about the Pettersson situation. I really am not. We do know if the Canucks can afford to keep him, they will. I do believe that he likes playing in Vancouver. So, those two things tell me that this onset panic, if I want to call it that, if it is that, I think might be a little overblown at this point.
Trade this week, Tanner Pearson-Casey DeSmith, the cost of Canucks a third-round pick, got them cap compliant. What did you make of it?
Well, it's a couple of things. First of all, we know that Patrick and Jimmy are familiar with Casey DeSmith because of his time signing as a free agent in Pittsburgh and playing for the Penguins early on in his career. So that's the one side that you know who you're getting. We're going to see more of these trades during camp as teams try to get more camp compliant. This is unfortunately the reality of the flat cap. The cost. What was the cost for the Canucks? Was a third round pick. So what was that price? Was that $1.5 million to $2 million for a third round pick? Well, we know a sixth round pick is $6 million. That's the last number that was traded to be cap compliant. So until we can get the cap closer to 90 and 95, then we're going to see this a great deal of the time as teams really still try to readjust from a time, guys, where they thought they had money to spend because everybody was talking about the cap getting close to 90 before the pandemic started, and guys getting 8-year deals before the pandemic started, and then it affecting it when it stayed flat for the last 3 years. So no different than 31 other teams trying to do it, I think. And I think that in the end, I'm not sure where Tanner would have fit in the Canucks long term. And I think that it probably just made some sense.
Lastly, from me, John, and I'm wearing my British Columbia flag hat from the 9 o'clock gun company. Is there a better provincial flag in Canada than BC's provincial flag? I don't think so. It has been number one in my
Who's got the lion? Nova Scotia? That's not bad.
There's a couple of them.
I tell you what, the new
Brunswick
Newfoundland
and PEI.
The new Newfoundland flag is fantastic. It's not the new one, not the one that when they joined Confederation. But I have always loved the Sun and the Union Jack together. I don't think you can argue with it. I mean, it was always something that all of us took great pride.
John.
Oh yeah, and the water. Well, we never had water like that in the Okanagan, boys. So you know,
absolutely, absolutely. I asked this not just to talk about flags and ours, but because Jim Rutherford said this week. And I guess Dallas is holding their training camp in Austin, Texas. But, of course, the Canucks in Victoria. Rutherford was asked this week, is camp still going to go around the province? And he said, well, next year Rogers Arena will be complete. And he does hope to have a practice facility good to go for the beginning of next offseason. But for a guy who hasn't lived here very long, he said, I'm paraphrasing. He said, I see value in bringing this club to the less populated areas of the province because we know they're Canucks fans and we want fans there to be able to reach out and touch the players and see the players and all that training camp entails. What do you think? As a native of the province from the town of Oliver, what says you about the Canucks doing training camp around the province going forward?
Listen, I want to see the Canucks in every corner of the province. I want to see the Canucks logo everywhere. I'll my own political speech, I want to see the Canucks more involved in the BC Hockey Hall of Fame. I want every time something happens in the hockey world in the province of British Columbia, there should be a Canuck logo beside it. There's no more idyllic region than the mountains and the ocean and the border. Come on. This is a provincial team. You know, if you go to Kamloops, you go to Prince George, you go to Rupert, you go to where I grew up, the Canucks mean something. And it is different than other places where there aren't as many physical boundaries. And I think it's brilliant to be able to say that. I think you sell your team to 4.5 million people in the province rather than 2 million people in the Lower Mainland. There's something to be said for it.
It's basically small-scale Toronto Blue Jays. Expand your market by making sure you get on out there and touch different. But the decision was made
for them, guys, when they don't have a practice facility. The minute they've got a practice facility that's just sitting there, and that's the main reason why no teams do it.
Get out.
But will they is the big question.
I know.
Yeah.
Well, I tell you what, it should be part of their marketing mantra every time they sit in a meeting.
Yeah.
What do we care what happens in Kelowna? Do we care what happens in Nelson? Do we care what happens, in Revelstoke? And the answer is...
Hey, they did PG. They did
PG several years ago, and good on them. They've been in Whistler before, Victoria. So,
and the inspiration the inspiration it will take, and it may be a microcosm, but when you can say, you know what, when I was a 9-year-old, I went and watched the Canucks go to camp, and now I want to play for the Vancouver Canucks, and that happens 12 years later. That's what this is all about, man.
Hey, and the other thing I'll say is PG, Fort St. John, that's contested territory right now because 97 from one province away is winning over fans. And, of course, we know what the lower right-hand corner of BC, you've got some singe marks from the team one province to the east.
I tell you what, one's a Goliath. and one's just a
Yeah.
small thing. I mean,
Yeah.
97's a Goliath when it comes to fan bases, that's for sure.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, one's an inferno, one's kindling
Yeah.
down in the southern part of the province. And incidentally, Manitoba and Ontario, it's the same damn flag with the smaller crest that's different. Your own province has a buffalo or a bison on it, and in Ontario, it's just a little bit of it's a flower. It's the trillium.
I know they should just
There's
focus
no-
on this ice.
There's no trillium on
It's a
there.
maple leaf.
It's
Sorry,
a,
my
it's
bad.
A tri- it's,
The
a,
maple
it's, a, it's a 3-twig maple leaf. That's right.
Trillium is Ontario.
Trillium is the provincial flower, though. But
You guys,
anyways,
you guys,
Trillium's
you guys flunked
Provincial
that in.
flower, Ontario.
You guys flunked that in grade 8, both of you. Okay.
anyways, nevertheless, we have the best flag. Shannon attests. Thank you, John.
Cheers, boys. Have a great weekend.
Be well.
This clip brought to you by LiUNA 1611, BC Laborers Union. Check out 1611.ca.